Welcome to Recovery Talk Live, an ongoing open discussion about psychological, emotional, and spiritual recovery. Our mission is to deliver the message that those who are suffering with emotional trauma can recover. And now, here are your hosts, Dawn and Terry.
Welcome to Recovery Talk Radio. I'm Dawn Maxwell, and I am here with my partner,
Terry Liddell, who's interested in helping you guys figure out what recovery is all about.
We have a high passion for recovery, and we just find that so often out in society, people hear the word recovery and they think someone has a broken leg or they're going to physical therapy, but we're here to talk about mental and emotional recovery from the things in life that have tripped you up. Do you have another definition for that, Terry?
Recovery, for me is learning to deal with life on life's terms and recognizing that life is tough, but that doesn't mean that in that process that we don't figure out the ways to deal with it effectively.
Okay, so if I'm just turning into Recovery Talk Radio for the first time with Dawn and Terry here, I don't know what we're talking about. So, just to go for the mainstream, because you and I live it so much, Terry, I looked it up on dictionary.com, and that is because I am astute to the 21st century, and even though I have my clunking big dictionary from high school here, hear it on the table, I realized that my kids would be like, Mom, use the iPhone. So, very astutely, I've looked up this definition. And the first definition of recovery is the act of regaining something lost or stolen. How do you feel about that? In relation to what we're talking about, life.
In the recovery process, when anything happens to us in the form of a trauma of some sort, or when we're talking about, in your and my journey is about drugs, alcohol, and a lot of other things that interfered with our lifestyle. The loss of something absolutely makes sense to me. I lost a lot of things along the way in my life, but in my recovery process and my sobriety, I've gained most of them back, if not more so.
So for me, and I think that your situation is the most common one, and that's where people think, oh, recovery, that's for the alcoholics and the druggies, and I'm just not one of those people. Mm-hmm. And my belief is that we're all one of those people, and for me, my main area of recovery is being a codependent enabler, and my best definition of codependency is being addicted to another person. And for me, it has been in my life, more toxic of a drug than if I were doing lines of cocaine every night. So whether somebody who's listening to our show and they have abused substances or not, there is still multiple ways that they can recover from life hurts. Are you in agreement with that?
Well, I think when you say life hurts, I think life hurts. There's no two ways about it. And in the process of recovery, we recover from all kinds of things, both personal, both financial. When you look at different things, my recovery journey included bankruptcy. I've been homeless. I've been on the streets. And yet, I've also lost people in my life in which I had to recover from the emotional part of that. My parents are dead. And important people in my life. So yeah, the loss of something significant isn't limited to just, as we think of drugs, alcohol, and those kinds of other things. Codependency, you've lost yourself in many ways.
Oh, yeah.
So I think, yeah, the loss of something significant I really like as a definition.
I really like also number 6 at dictionary.com, me being the 21st century savvy woman, says the regaining of putting things into a usable form as from waste. And that's like number 6 down on the list, but I really like it because I know for myself, when I hit a bottom, and that means hitting a bottom for me was just, I had nothing left. Like I was absolutely suicidal at one point because I couldn't make, right from left, up from down, and everything felt like waste to me. And I had to completely turn it around. So for me, that really, that one really hits a chord with me, the last one. That's on that definition. Did you ever feel like that yourself? What was your bottom like for you?
My bottom. Boy, that's an interesting statement.
And can you define that? Because you are the guru.
Yeah,
and so much older than I am that you can
Thank
really
you for
get
sharing.
to it. I just like to throw it at you, dude.
Yeah, thank you much.
It's just for fun.
I think for me, my bottom was kind of interesting because I had to decide at a moment whether I wanted to continue my lifestyle or I wanted what wasn't there. And so I really, my life was a train wreck on a good day. And so for me to to start building on something that had value, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of where I was. And it's kind of interesting because it was October 23rd, 22 years ago.
Wow.
And if you'd have told me that the day before, this was my last day to really get fried, I'd have said, you're crazy. You know, there's no way. You know, I'm fine. I'm handling it. And all the junk that goes along with our lives. But I woke up in the morning and a buddy of mine called and said, would I give him a ride? And I gave him a ride out to the Honor Farm in Orange County here. And we met a guy named Jack Clark. And Jack Clark was the head of men's programs for the Orange County Jail. And my soon-to-be sponsor that I didn't know yet was going to be my sponsor, said he had a recovery program. And in the process of the discussion, Jack Clark said to me, you know, you got a problem, dude. You need to get help.
Wow.
And it was like, really?
Just randomly to your face?
I mean, it's just like it was off
he
the
could
wall.
see it.
Yeah, it was very strange.
Love it.
And so I asked him, okay, so what makes you think so? And he says, well, it takes one to know one. And wow, I mean, that really bugged me. So I took Bob home as the guy that I drove out there, and I stood in the bathroom looking in the mirror going, okay, what do you see? What do you see? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? It's because I couldn't see anything wrong with me. But that was the start of a journey into sobriety and giving up stuff that wasn't serving me well, and claiming stuff, picking up stuff, and adding stuff to my life that does serve me well. So I think that regaining a life that has value to it from the waste of the way I was doing it is absolutely correct. I love this thing. I think you got some great definitions is what I'm doing.
Interesting. The last one is the one that you and I both find the most significant.
Yeah.
Number 6.
So, you know, because I think the process of becoming aware of what's really going on, that this is a process that needs to be changed, that there needs to be something here that we are wasting away, if you want to look at it and say, these are the things that are really difficult. I mean, this is hard. To be a liar, cheat, and a thief in our process is actually very difficult, but it's what we know how to do. And I think that's part of the process, is that in changing or reclaiming requires that we do things differently. And that's not easy.
It's not. And I think a significant fact, I mean, you're relating to, you know, the drug scenario. And I myself have alcohol in my background. Last drink, August 86. You just don't forget that. And what that pivotal moment was. But I think where people get lost is they think, I'm just not abusing a substance. I'm just not there. I'm not drinking. I'm not doing drugs. And it is so much more. You can be shopping. You can be out of financial control, like you mentioned. I mean, I know people who walk around Target, and I've done this myself, fill up the basket to feel good of the things you want and then dump it and not pay for it. There are multiple ways that people numb out. So we don't want to lose those people who didn't have physical substance abuse like you and I experienced.
That's a really good point, because it's recovery is restoration, and in many ways I think it's recognizing that there's something needs to be changed. And you're right. I mean, there's how many different ways that people can get themselves in trouble. There's a myriad of ways. And then you talked earlier about the physical injuries. You know,
yes,
it's kind of interesting because. In many ways, when you have a physical injury, people recognize it and will help you and do all kinds of things. You get crutches, we get canes, we get walkers, we get all kinds of things. But when we're recovering from some of the emotional stuff, we don't get the same kind of support. And that might be something we ought to talk about.
I think that's significant. I know for me, I'm a pain shuffler. I went from drinking up until, I stopped at a very young age because I started at a young age, into moving into food. And I ballooned up to 227 pounds, and I lost that weight, and I've lost 95 pounds on a recovery journey. And then I slipped into codependency, being addicted to another person and losing my sense of self. And so I think a lot of times for me on my journey, I just transferred, pain shuffler, I just transferred addictions around. And the ones that are not immediately visible, if you're not stumbling on the street corner, go ignored. And people do tend to run over to the obviously injured one, where you can be walking around looking great and about to off yourself the next day and nobody knows it, sees it, and it actually happens all the time because it's not obvious with the naked eye.
Well, I think that says volumes about what's the number one drug that's sold in the United States today.
Is it booze? Is it alcohol?
Nope,
No.
it's not good. Nope.
All right.
Got any ideas?
Meth?
Nope, it's called antidepressants.
Oh, okay. Go on, because I got something to say about that.
Okay,
You just
so
hit the button, buddy.
We have a society that I'm thinking kind of an interesting idea here. We have a society that doesn't want to deal with recovery and the cost of recovering and the cost of change. We just soon medicate.
Okay, now I have to tell you something pivotal, and this is not an accident that you brought this up, because I was helping out someone who is actually on disability right now that I know. And just because the person is disabled, making some calls for them, and the person is disabled for depression. So I called the county, because people in this situation, like with any other disability, need an advocate, so I'm helping this person out. The worker, I got on the phone, social worker, I don't know who they are at the disability office, said, do you know, and you and I are broadcasting today, even though we have a wide array of listeners from Orange County, California, the number one thing that people are on disability for right now from work, and it's well over 50%, it's like 72%, she told me, is for depression.
Yep.
Not cancer, not Parkinson's, not heart disease, depression. And she said what's really heartbreaking to her as a caseworker, and that just blew my mind. I just thought, okay, we have a major problem if that's over 50% of the reason people are on disability. She said it's like 20-year-olds calling in that can't even have a conversation.
Yep.
And that blew my mind. It fired me up. And I feel like I need to do something because something's wrong. I'm not denying that it's a clinical brain thing. I'm educated about that. But what are your thoughts about that? That just blew my mind when I heard that.
Well, it's interesting because the clients that I have in my practice.
And please tell us about your practice and your credential. Let's do a little Terry prop. Woohoo!
My little thing. Okay. I have a master's degree in human behavior, and I work with people with addictions. I have with anger stuff, with people who are struggling with depressions and things. Do a lot of couples work. With folks who are dealing with anger problems, communication, those kinds of things. And I've been doing it for 21 years? Yeah, close, something like that.
Okay.
And but the idea there is that the people that walk into the office, we have two major issues. Depression being a big one and anger being the other one. And the interesting thing is what I find in depression is a lot of it's unresolved anger.
Oh.
And because they've chewed on it, they can't fix it, the system's against them, whatever. And they haven't figured out a way to deal with the anger. So if you swallow it long enough, it becomes depression. And it's interesting because we don't do a lot of things to make things better in our society. I mean, we don't talk to people about it. We don't share. Orange County, California, everything's wonderful. And if you're not wonderful, there must be something wrong with you. So we have a lot of internal pressure, families and otherwise, and then external pressure in Orange County as to you should be successful. If you're not, there's something wrong. So I see depression as being a major league player only because people don't talk about it.
But are you staggered by the statistic? Because I was staggered by the statistic. That doesn't even rock your world at all.
No, because you think about the journey that you and I came through in our recovery stuff. How many people were depressed?
Oh,
in
that's
the meetings,
a part
you look
of
at all
it.
their stuff. Absolutely.
Yes.
So, no, it doesn't
been there.
stagger me at all. I think what bothers me most is that when you look at medication has a life. Take every 4 to 6 hours, take 2 every 24 hours or whatever. So medication feels better, but nothing changes because as soon as you have to take another pill, you're back to where you started.
Although it's pivotal. It's pivotal for me. I could not get out of my anxiety state in my 20s of severe depression and being suicidal until I was on medication to get stabilized, and then I was able to deal with my issues and get it out.
Well,
so there's a place
what you're
for
saying?
it.
No,
Let's
I didn't
not
say.
diss it.
No, you can't get in my face here. Okay.
Okay.
It's not
'Cause
about.
I'm an advocate now.
It's not about not taking medication.
Okay.
It's about not being medication as the answer.
Right. No, it's definitely not the answer,
Okay.
but it's a tool to get you to a
it's a tool to get you
coping
back to where
place.
you are because when you get
Exactly.
stuck in a place, getting yourself back. But anyway, it looks like we have to take a break, so we shall be with you in a moment.
Join us in a moment for more Recovery Talk Radio.
You're watching Recovery Talk Live. If you would like to contact Don and Terry, please send your email to recoverytalklive@gmail.com. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or insight, we'd love to hear from you. Again, send your email to recoverytalklive@gmail.com.
Welcome back to Recovery Talk Radio with Don and Terry. And before the break, Terry, we were talking about recovery. And just before we move on, I just want to wrap it up in that topic by saying it really is for everyone. Getting that disclaimer off that it's only for people who are hardcore drug addicts. That's the thing that bothers me. How would you wrap that up, that this is a universal
recovery need? To me, in what I do in working with people, is recovery is simply moving away from a trauma and into something that is more beneficial. So it doesn't really matter if it's loss of a loved one, for example.
Right.
There's recovery in that. If it's an addiction, if you will, if it's something in which there's been a life change. I do some coaching with people in my practice, and one of the things that I find is that having them, they lose a job, things like that. So recovery, to me, is moving from a trauma into something that works much better for you.
Okay, so you just said something that was key, and it's something I run into because I give my testimony all over. And one of the biggest things I get after a testimony is, wow, that was significant because I have so much trauma in my childhood. But people often think, well, if theirs was nowhere near mine, it must not be significant. The abuse that I have survived can be just as traumatic to someone if their cat died, because everybody's unique. I'm not, or a parent dying. It doesn't have to mean that they were abused. I think some people think if they don't have a significant amount of trauma that they don't need recovery, but that's not true.
No. Trauma is I use the analogy of it may be a 2 for me, but it's a 10 for you. It doesn't matter.
But equally important.
To the person that's hurting,
yes.
that's suffering.
Yes.
Yes.
Equally important. I just think that needs to be known.
Yeah, I think that's huge.
I mean, I know as we go on with the show, broadcasting live from Orange County, California, and more of our stories come out, people might think, wow, I've never done that. I've never been homeless. They might say when they hear you, and
right.
Well, I wasn't a childhood abuse survivor like I was. So we don't want to alienate those people because really a divorce is a significant loss. It can cause trauma.
Having done a divorce, I can guarantee you that's a significant loss. So,
yeah, it's a very significant.
Yeah, so I think if we take a broad definition of recovery and say it's moving away from trauma, learning to do a different lifestyle, one that's healthier, something that causes us to be able to survive and
yes.
and move past surviving into growth and those kinds of things. Yeah, so I think recovery is going to be an ongoing topic for us. I don't think we're going too far away from it.
No, it's always our core. We just want everybody to understand it. But I know for myself, there was no way that I could have started the recovery process. I remember being told that I needed a step study, and I was angry because I thought my husband was actually in rehab at the time, and the leader said to me, you need a step study. And that really took away my whole, hey, he ruined my life thing I had going on for me, and I had to go in there and take ownership of being a co-addict, an enabler, of letting things happen in and around me. This is years ago. And I was angry. I was very angry, but it was the ownership. I remember one doctor, when I was in my 20s, when I was suicidal, and I drove myself to a psychiatrist. I had a big plan, called somebody, they came and stayed with me. Next day, drove myself to a psychiatrist for help. I just have got at my core big survival instinct. And he said to me, when you point one finger at somebody else, you're pointing 3 back at yourself. Not right away. He didn't want me to jump off the roof or anything at that time, but that's something about ownership is I think for myself, I just wanted to point the finger. What do you think about ownership?
Ownership to me is a pretty simple but very difficult thing to do. Ownership means that I take responsibility for my part. And when we get angry, when we're in situations, and it's the last thing I want to do is say, okay, maybe I do have a piece of this. Maybe I do have some responsibility in what's going on. Because it's much easier to blame, and you're wrong and I'm right works a lot,
right.
And so I think in many ways we get stuck in that I'm right and you're wrong, and then often we go find people who support our our point of view.
Oh.
So,
The unsafe, toxic pool of friends?
There you go.
Okay, baby. I've been swimming in it. Not now. No dissing my current friends, but I've swam in the pool.
So we do that, and that's one of the things that when in a healthy recovery, for example, if you go to a hospital, which I've been in, the people there cared about my health, and so they did the things that I didn't necessarily enjoy. I've had surgeries, and they're not fun, and so the process of those people caring about me, though, sometimes is very painful. So we don't like that.
No, we don't like it.
So in the recovery journey, we prefer to have people who agree with us and are not necessarily willing to stand up and say, hey, you might be wrong.
The surgical analogy is good because a lot of people who are unfamiliar to recovery, as we're speaking about it, may have had a surgery, even a wisdom tooth taken out, and know what that process looks like.
Going to the dentist. Love that one.
Hey, that's I don't like that at all. Let's just face it, I don't like it at all.
Yeah, the dentist goes, okay, so let's get in here and let's... I had to get a crown put on because my old one broke, and I don't like going to the dentist. But the fun part was, I got a new crown, and it works much better than the old one. And the pain that I had when the crown broke, in the nerve endings and all the other stuff. So, is it painful? Yeah. Was it expensive? Not in comparison to the relief that I got.
It's interesting. We could get a whole show going on how many people hate the dentist and probably get a lot of callers. It's funny, even when I was in traffic school, not that I ever broke any traffic laws, they said the number one highest suicide rate, more than psychiatrists, were dentists. I don't want to get off on a tangent, but dentists, you are welcome to our recovery show. We feel your pain. We know everyone hates you, but Dawn and Terry here at Recovery Talk Radio, we want to help you heal your wounds. Not fix them, but facilitate you poor sick dentists that are out there.
Yeah.
We just alienated a large population here. Okay, so for me, ownership means that I'm looking at my stuff, how I blew it, without pointing a finger at the other person, and then just keeping my side of the street clean.
Well, because ownership says, okay, what piece of this could I be? Am I protecting myself and not accepting the fact that maybe I've said things that are wrong? Maybe I've done things that are wrong. Am I blaming you for things that you really have no control over? What is it that is my piece of the puzzle? Because ownership says, I care. I'm invested in this process. It's not just you that's broken. It's bigger than one person. Because in the process of recovery, the relationships that we're dealing with here, in many ways, we're talking about the ability to make it better.
Right.
So go back to my surgeries. The nurse says, this is going to hurt, and you go, swell. But they did it because it's a process of healing, and that's taking me going, okay, I signed up for this. I'm going to see this through to the end. Right.
But as a codependent enabler in recovery myself, I realize, and I speak to all my codependent listeners, that I can't make you, if you hurt me outside of this show or just call me some stupid name and I'm angry at you, I can't make you take ownership of that. Even though as a codependent, I'm going to want you to see the horrible thing you did, I can't fix you. And it's difficult for people who are codependent like myself, and constantly recovering it, to get that you cannot make the other person see their wrongs. You can only look at yourself. Rough.
Okay, but why is that rough if you let people deal with their stuff and not try to fix it?
Dude, because it's a sickness. I think codependency is worse than the booze. For me, it was. I mean, the booze you can stop.
Okay, so think about
codependency.
Codependency is supporting another person's negative behavior.
Right.
Okay, so if you stop supporting other people's negative behavior, what could happen?
Well, then you have to look at yourself.
Yes, and if you look at yourself, what could happen?
Then you got to take responsibility for your sick, toxic
take ownership.
behavior.
Okay, and then what happens if you took ownership and let the other people deal with what's their stuff is?
Then you're alone and have nobody to fix but yourself, and that can really stink. Because then you got to look at all your ugliness.
Okay, now you and I have gone to meetings.
Yes.
How often were we alone?
Never at a meeting.
Okay, so if we invite those people who are reasonably healthy into our life,
yes,
two things happen. One is we don't have to save the world.
No.
Number two, we have people who will tell us the truth, who will support us in our recovery journey.
The sanest people I know are the people in the circle.
There you go.
That's the only place in my world things make sense.
So the process then, taking ownership, means I simply refuse, to the best of my abilities on any given moment, to be influenced by other people's behaviors.
Okay. I'm hearing you. I had a relapse in my codependency this last year, and I was beating myself up, and my recovery friend said, look, you are taking yourself, and, this is part of the codependency. I'm owning somebody else's pain that was perpetrated. And I started thinking about this, and I was talking to my sponsor, having coffee with her, and she said, Dawn, look, you're beating yourself up because you got into a codependent relationship out there, and ignored a lot of things. And a lot of people had heard this analogy. I never heard it. She said, if you were a frog who jumped in a pot of boiling water, you would jump out because you would know you were being scalded. But oftentimes, as codependents and probably non-codependents, you jump in the cold water, and slowly the heat gets turned up, and you're cooked and you're fried, and then you're dead before you even realize it was happening. That's a dynamic of codependency. So for me, having so much recovery under my belt and having codependency behavior, I really beat myself up in a relapse. It's not obvious like taking a shot of something.
Okay, well, let's play with me here for a minute.
All righty.
Okay.
I don't know if I like your playground,
I know,
but
here's the thing.
dip my toes in the sand.
Yeah,
Okay.
What is the first step of the 12 steps of recovery?
Powerlessness.
Okay, so if I'm a codependent and I'm powerless, what am I doing managing somebody else?
I've completely lost my sight and my vision.
Okay. So the reason for the first step is to recognize the fact that I'm not in control.
Right. I'm not.
Okay. So if I'm powerless over my stupidity,
Yeah, I am.
and my life is unmanageable, then who do I take care of?
For me, I'm powerless, and God's the only one with power.
Okay, so
I can
if
do
that's
nothing
true,
without him.
okay, because here's the
And I mean the living God, not.
Yeah, I get that. So here's the thing: if I'm powerless over my stupidity and my life is unmanageable,
Yes.
I'm willing to come to the conclusion that maybe there's a power greater than myself who would return me to sanity.
Otherwise, I'll jump off the roof.
Okay, and the third thing is turn my life and my will over to the care of God.
Yes.
So if I did those simple things, which are extremely difficult to do,
Yeah, you make it sound like a list,
Yeah,
but
no,
it's gut-wrenching stuff. Yeah.
but if I look at it and say, okay, ownership, if I'm powerless, I own that.
No,
And
you're
then I can
owning the
recognize-
powerlessness.
I'm owning the powerless.
Meaning your lack of ability to control all the chaos
Okay,
in your
so
life.
I own that. So I'm
Right.
taking ownership of the fact I'm powerless. Now, the fun part for me is in my recovery journey has been that the more powerless I am, the more room God's got to work in my life, literally become more powerful.
The more powerless I am,
I
because
like
you're stepping out of your own way.
getting out of my own way, letting God have his way with me in
Right.
that moment, the more powerful I become because it's not me in my brilliance. Because
Right.
I don't know about you, but my brilliance never has gotten me any place. But
Nope.
yeah.
Nope.
So
Not a bus I want to ride.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the concept then becomes I'm powerless. God gets to work. My life is unmanageable. Now, Bob, my sponsor, who was a very interesting guy, he said there's one thing in your life you can manage, and only one thing. Now, in the midst of my train wreck, if you will, I thought that makes sense. And he said the next decision you make is the only thing you can manage. Well, 22 years later, guess what? There's still only one thing I can manage, and that's the next decision that I make. So I'm taking ownership of being responsible for me and my choices.
Of your own thoughts, feelings, and actions.
There you go.
And that's all you can do.
That's it.
And everything else is outside. And see, as a codependent, that's rough because that's your drug. Your desperation to reach out, for me, I can only speak for myself, to reach out and try to make all these intangibles tangible.
But that means you're playing God, and pardon me, but I don't think you're big enough.
I have
lost
lost
too
weight,
much
so
weight.
I know
There you go.
there's less of me to do it.
A lot less of you, and
then
your
I-
shoes are too small.
I
and all
know.
those things.
Well, then I'm thinking, the next time we get together here on Recovery Talk Radio, broadcasting live from Orange County, California, we need to address denial, because if we can't get past denial,
I think
gonna remain
denial and
powerless.
acceptance. We can put those on the schedule, and I think we can have some fun.
let's dangle that carrot for the people who are in denial about being in denial, denying their denial. You denying your denial, people, stay with us for the next episode
Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time.
on Recovery Talk Radio, broadcasting live from Orange County, California, with Dawn and Terry.
You've been watching Recovery Talk Live. If you have questions, comments, concerns, or insight, we'd love to hear from you. Send your email to recoverytalklive@gmail.com. That's recoverytalklive@gmail.com. Look for new episodes every week, and thanks for watching Recovery Talk Live.